Today, I'm breaking down how I took this photo at the Carnival with just one Speedlight for stunning portraits. I'm breaking down one of my favorite shots step by step. In this video, we're diving deep into the process behind this photo, from the initial setup to the raw editing in Capture One, and finally the finishing touches in Photoshop. Let's cover todo el pero. Let's talk about the gear and settings I used for this shoot. I was working with the Sony a7R5 and the Sony G Master 85mm Mark II f1.4. A quick shout out to Sony for sending me this setup as a rental. Now for this shot, I really wanted to put the 85mm f1.4 to the test and check out the bokeh quality. So I set my aperture wide open at f1.4 to really isolate deadening with the aperture and the focal length. My shutter speed was set to 1/160th of a second, which is important because it helped me control the ambient light, giving me the perfect balance of brightness and background ambient. My ISO was set to 400, which is where I usually set it for night portraits, but keep in mind it can vary between 100 and 400 depending on the ambient at your location. One of the ways I've continued to learn and grow as a photographer is by using platforms like Skillshare. Recently, I took a class called Find Your Photography Style, Create a Unique and Consistent Look by Sean Dalton. What I really enjoyed about this class was one of Sean's exercises. He had us analyze 3 of our photos and identify patterns like reoccurring visual choices, light, and composition. It forced me to slow down and see the decisions I naturally make behind the camera. Another huge insight was when Sean broke down photography into 4 stylistic elements: light, composition, and subject matter. He encouraged us to focus on just one of those elements each day while shooting and to ignore the rest. At first, that idea of creative constraint felt challenging, but that's actually what I love most. Limiting yourself to one focus, like only paying attention to light, pushes you to grow creatively in ways you might not expect. And that's what makes Skillshare so valuable. It constantly gets me thinking differently about my work, and there are tons of classes taught by amazing creators on Skillshare, covering everything from photography to graphic design to video. If you're looking to grow as a creative, check out Skillshare. The first 500 people to use my link in the description or scan the QR code will receive a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. Get started today. As for the light setup, I used one of my favorites for night portraits. I had the Westcott FJ80 Mark II Speedlight paired with the 36-inch Westcott Beauty Dish with silver interior, which is one of my favorite modifiers. It's right here, this bad boy. I love this baby. For the light power, I set it to 3.3, which is the equivalent to 1/64th power. Speedlights are my absolute go-to when using off-camera flash for night portraits because they're compact, easy to move, and come with a modeling light. If you're new to off-camera flash, the modeling lights gives you just enough light to help when focusing in low light conditions. It's such a lifesaver during night sessions. To mount my Speedlight to the modifier, you can use a quick S-mount bracket like this, which is one of my favorites to securely attaching a Speedlight. One of the most important things to remember when you're working with off-camera flash is that you have 2 exposures. Your ambient exposure. So here you'll see I'm getting how I want the background to be. How dark or bright do I want it to be? Once you get that exposure, the subject is going to be a little bit dark, and that's where you add in your Speedlight or flash. So in my case, I added the FJ80, and for my second exposure, I just got to figure out the power output, anywhere between 1 and 9, and figure out the correct balance to get the final results. When it comes to planning my night shoots, I'm always on the hunt for locations bursting with color, and when I found out the Carnival was in town, I knew I had to set up a photo shoot there. Now here's the funny story about this specific shot. It actually almost didn't happen. This was actually the last series from this entire photo shoot. And in one of my favorite podcasts, Ed Milet, he has a saying in the podcast, and he always says, just one more, just one more. And I kept hearing that in my head. I could have easily packed up and left, but I decided to go back to this spot and try just one more shot. And guess what, guys? The last photo ended up being my absolute favorite from this entire session. And I'm curious, does that ever happen to you? The last shot you end up taking ends up being your favorite. Let me know in the comments. Now let's jump into Capture One and see how this shot came together. All right, now that we're in Capture One, I want to show you the process that led up to the shot. So for this photo, I was pretty content. I was like, you know what? I think I got all the cool shots that I would want, and I think it's time to pack up. And look what happened. I'm already in the parking lot here, guys, and I'm already about to leave. I see the Ferris wheel, and I'm like, OMG, that looks cool. Let me get some photos here. But I'm going to be honest, I didn't really like it. I was way too far to the Ferris wheel. I did not like the framing that it had on Deboning. So then this is where it kicked in. Ed Milet, just one more, Eli, just walk back, go get another photo before you leave, and then bam. Now remember, here's the ambient exposure. This is before I add flash. You want to get your background first. How dark or bright do you want your background to be? And then bam, add in your flash, right? So that's what I did here. And then now when I was at the Carnival, remember you can't control the colors in the background. You just kind of have to time it just right and get a little bit lucky. So I was just shooting away here because I was already tired and I was ready to go home. It was past my bedtime. You don't even want to know what my bedtime is. Guess in the comments what my bedtime is. But anyways, I was getting 3/4 shots. I was getting full body, just trying to get a variety of different shots and angles of Deboning until I got to the final photo. So let me just jump right into that really quick, which was this one here. Now, if you're curious what the before looked like, this is the before, ladies and gentlemen. This is with no editing. Looks pretty dang good. A lot of times people think a lot of editing goes into it, and that's not the case. When you work with off-camera flash, it adds a beautiful pop into your images. So I added a base layer. Let's take a look at that. Just bring up the shadows, bring up the blacks, reduce contrast a little bit. I want to bring back some detail basically. And I do a little bit of the color grading, right? So the shadows, purple, midtones, orange, highlights, and the teal. So base, that's what I got so far. Then I selected the background. If I push M on the keyboard, what's in green is what's being color graded. So you'll notice I added highlights and shadows specifically to that. But then I also got rid of some of the green. So I adjusted the tint as well. So if you look ever so slightly here, you'll see just a subtle difference. And then the t-shirt selection. So right here, before, after, before, after. Now, whenever you're photographing somebody with something white, it is going to be a little bit more brighter because you're using the flash. White and white, it's going to make it a little bit bright. So I made a mask, selected it, and then just brought down the exposure ever so slightly. In Photoshop, this is what I started off with the settings from Capture One. If I zoom in, I want to show you the skin retouching. So right here, you'll see Deboning has pretty good skin. A lot of times when people see Deboning, they think, oh my gosh, it could be over edited, but not necessarily. She has really good skin. So frequency separation, dodge and burn are the techniques that I use in Photoshop when I'm editing. Now I'll use Evoto from time to time, but for this photo, I did it manually, frequency separation, dodge and burn. Now, if you're wondering how to do this, I do have full length tutorials. I know some of you might be watching this like, oh, Eli, I would want to watch this in this video, but the video would be too long. It would be like 50 minutes, an hour long. So yeah, I have some tutorials. I'll have those linked in the description. For the color grading, I absolutely love selective color. Selective color is my absolute favorite when it comes to skin retouching, or not skin retouching, but skin color grading, I should say. So basically you just add an adjustment layer and you just go and add selective color. And then you just go into the reds and the yellows and then manipulate those specifically to get the color on the skin that you want. Then I use selective color again, but I specifically do it to the background. So I do make a mask and you'll see what's in red is not being affected because I only want to color grade the background. Now the color grading for the background is going to be different on image to image. You have to experiment. So I went in there and manipulated the blues, the yellows, and the cyans. So the answer is going to be different on image to image. Just play around with selective color, super easy. Then for the shadows, I added just a little bit more purple down here. Not a big effect. I think you might be able to see it subtly down here. Nothing too crazy, just a little bit more. All right. Then I love running it through Camera Raw filter. So I run Camera Raw filter, and then you'll notice it gets a little bit more teal. I added a little bit more teal in the highlights, added a little bit more reds, brought in that contrast back in, and then added some clarity. And one of my favorite things to do is to add a fade to the background. So whenever you're taking pictures, whatever's in the foreground should have more contrast and in the background should have less contrast. That's how you get that three-dimensionality. So I reduced the contrast to the background. So you'll see that. See how now the subject is able to pop. And then the last thing I did is I usually just add a curves, do some exposure adjustments towards the end. So at the very end here, this is the before, after. Let me go ahead and zoom in. So you could see the face right there, before and after. I hope you enjoyed this breakdown of this night portrait. And if you're looking for more, don't forget to check out my other flash tutorials right here on this channel, as well as my editing tutorials for Capture One and Photoshop. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you on the next one.